Lots of people are telling me that you can't be trespassed from public property in Texas, or you have to commit a crime to be trespassed from public property in Texas. Well, that's news to me. This is Griffin V State, Texas Court of Appeals, December 7th, 2007. A guy was sitting on a DART, D-A-R-T, bench. And he was outside, at the DART West transfer station. You could actually Google that and you can see pictures of it. It's just a bunch of benches. I think there's a building in the middle, but he was outside on a bench. And it's their policy that if people are chilling on DART property for purposes other than using public transportation, they can trespass him. So they trespass this dude. And the guy sued because, or no, he challenged it. I think he challenged it. Yeah, he challenged it. He said it was unconstitutional. He said something about it was unconstitutional. He filed a pretrial motion. Yeah, he challenged it, said it was unconstitutional. And the court basically said that you did it all wrong, and so no. And you're going to say, well, that means that it could have been unconstitutional. The guy just filed his motion wrong and didn't preserve he didn't allege that the facts in the case failed to meet the minimums to convict him. Well, no, because the trial court found that the facts were sufficient and he was convicted. But we'll accept your argument for now. We'll pretend that this one didn't happen. Next, we got Anthony V State. A lot of people were bringing this one up to me. Well, what about this? So in this one, Anthony, I think that's his last name. Yeah, Lamar Anthony Jr. He was in a park. The city gave the police the ability to trespass anybody from the park for any reason. They gave him they didn't tell him when you could get trespassed. They just like, yeah, if the police officer tells you gotta go, then you're trespassed. Well, Anthony was having none of it. So he challenged the constitutionality of it. Not of the statute, but of the guidelines. And the court found that the guidelines that were given to the police officer were vague. So every law has to be written in such a way that a person should be able to kind of figure out whether or not they're breaking the law. Now, it doesn't mean that every person has to completely understand it. But it means that if you tell a person this is the law that you're breaking, the person should be able to be like, oh, really? That's against the law? Well, then I will do something different that will not be in violation of the law. Well, if you don't have to actually break park policy for the police to trespass you, how will you ever know if the police are going to trespass you? If they don't like the cut of your jib, whatever that means, they could trespass you. That's terrible. So it violates procedural due process. You have to be able to tell what exactly you are facing. And it didn't. So there you go. Because it was it was vague, then the discretion that was given to the police officer was invalid. And therefore, there's this little section. The evidence is legally insufficient. In order to get a trespass, you have to show that you had a better right of ownership than the person you're trespassing. So, let's say you own property. You own it. You're the owner. And let's say you rent it to somebody. You could get trespassed from property you own by the renter because he has a greater right of possession than you do. And that's what they're looking at here. They're looking at the right of possession. I think I originally said greater right of ownership, but I meant greater right of possession. So the owner may, he owns it, right? But he can still get trespassed because he is signed over the right of possession to the renter, as long as the renter, pays his rent and all that fun stuff. So in order for you to get trespassed, the person who's trespassing you has to have a greater right of possession. Well, what happens if we challenge that? This is Wilson V State. Now, in Wilson V State, we're going to look at something very similar to Anthony V State. I've tried to put these in somewhat logical order. Silly me. But in this one, we have a guy who gets trespassed from a community center because he's making the ladies uncomfortable. He's a very forward young man. He likes to chase him down. He's a hard pursuer. And his game isn't very good, apparently. So the city manager trespassed him. And it was an unwritten, look at that, unwritten building use policy. Now you're going to say to yourself, well, that's got to be vague. It's leaving it up to the discretion of the city manager. Nope. So in this case, the court found that Wilson's behavior was inconsistent with the use of the facility for its intended purpose. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? A state gets to preserve its property for its intended purpose. Sounds a lot like Adderley v. Florida. You're starting to see the webs we weave. Because it was consistent with the stated purpose of the community center, then he could trespass Wilson from it. And the city manager has a greater right of possession than just somebody off the street, just a member of the public. So Anthony V. State trespassed from the park by a police officer who didn't have to abide by policy versus trespass from a community center. Park, traditional public forum. Community center, at best a limited public forum. At worst a non-public forum. So that's the difference. You can see the difference in the way this is playing out. And the city manager it was a policy. It was just an unwritten policy. And the court actually said, it's something that Mr. Wilson should have taken care of civilly, meaning going to like a court and filed some sort of a suit to try to get them to put it on paper or otherwise clarify it. Maybe go to the city manager and request them to put it on paper so that he could be in compliance of it. But they said he should have handled that civilly. Bader V State. This guy was on a campus, on a university campus, just doing his thing. Now, he wasn't a student. There's a problem. So security guard or security guards kept dealing with this guy. He would sleep on the couches in the student center. He would go to use computers. But he'd been given written notice that he was trespassed. So his deal was that the school didn't show that it had a greater right of possession than he did, because the school is funded by the public funds and he's a member of the public. And the court said, nah, the school, the university in this case, has a greater right of possession than you do. Now, he didn't commit any crimes. He was just chilling. Well, he didn't commit any crimes until he was arrested for criminally trespassing. In fact, Griffin wasn't committing any crimes. Anthony, I don't think he was committing any crimes. Yeah, it was just trespass. Wilson, again, just trespass. Bader, again, just trespass. I don't think you actually have to commit a crime to be trespassed from public property. So this is in Re A.I. This is where a student was left or kicked out. I think he left. He withdrew from high school. And then for whatever reason that I can't quite figure out, he went back. He went back to high school like 2 weeks later. And they saw him at the high school. Several people did. And so they said, you know what? Criminal trespass. Well, how could they do that? Well, he withdrew from the school. He withdrew from the school. And he was warned when he withdrew from the school that if he entered the school premises, he would be arrested for criminal trespass. Subsequently, he was seen there. He was arrested for criminal trespass. The principal's name she was listed as the owner. She had the better right of possession than he did, because she was actually the principal of the school and he was not even a student. So there you go. What's this one? This is Spingola. Spingola. What were you? Oh, this guy, Spingola. Spingola, I believe he wanted to hand out anti-abortion literature. Are you anti-abortion literature? Let's see. Let's see if I remember this correctly. He went on to a school and he started handing out abortion literature. No. All right. So he was in the mall area of the campus. He was talking about abortion. All right. So they're like, hey, you guy, you're not allowed to do that here on the mall area of the campus. You need to go over there to the free speech area of campus. And he was like, this is a constitutionally protected activity. I can be here because this is public. And they're like, no, you can't. And so they actually do the public analysis, or the public forum analysis, and they get the limited public forums, traditional public forums. They find that the school is a limited public forum, and there you go. Trespass confirmed. Not breaking any laws, just standing in the wrong place talking about abortion. And then this guy, he was in a public building and he was told to leave in the transit authority. And he was like, but I'm a union rep. You can't trespass me. And they found out that the transit authority has a greater right of possession than a union rep for the transit authority building. Not breaking any laws. He was just trying to get him to change a bid, And he was out of there. She gone. Let's see. Reid V State. I had some time at the law library today. Could you tell? All right. This one was, another anti-abortion guy. So this guy went on to a high school, I believe. It was a high school. Yeah, it was a high school. And he was handing out abortion pamphlets, booklets. And the school was like, you know what, dude? All right. You can leave the books with us and we'll let people take them, but you can't be here. We're not trying to stifle your speech, but you can't be here. And so he tried to play the whole constitutionally protected activity shtick, but this was trespassing is a conduct restriction. They're not saying you can't be here talking about abortion. They're saying you can't be here. And when you go back to the whole conduct deal, then that is a significant government interest, and it is got to be basically not really, it's not targeting free speech, and it's only tangentially infringing on free speech, and they have to be constitutionally allowed to do it. But it gets better because there's a lower forum, or there's a lower analysis. There's the non-public forum. Now, schools, if they open up their school to people to speak, then they have to be all content neutral and viewpoint neutral and all that fun stuff. But if they haven't opened up their forum for speech, it's essentially a non-public forum. And in order for you to basically get bibbity-bobbity bounced out of a non-public forum, then it's just got to be viewpoint neutral. And it's got to be reasonable. Bada boom, bada bing. She gone. I've been watching, there's this gas station video or gas station YouTube website where they have all these people go in there and shoplift, and it's pretty funny. I'll put a link to it in the description. If you're wondering why I'm shouting she gone, it's pretty hilarious. They're all good. The guy talks in a funny voice. I'm a sucker for funny voices. Finally, we got Rogers v. Owens. And Rogers v. Owens was a gal who was going to get kicked out of her psychiatrist's office, and she called the police, and she got hurt. Oh no, she got hurt during her arrest. And the police officer was correct in arresting her because the psychiatrist has a greater right of possession than she does. And as far as excessive force was concerned, just because she hurt her shoulder doesn't mean that he doesn't get his qualified immunity. He gets to use handcuffs. So all you guys who are talking about, I just found this one, who are talking about like, oh, my wrists really hurt from this Leon Valley arrest. If they had probable cause to arrest, and that is a huge if, or if they were reasonably, or they had good faith belief that they were reasonable good faith belief that they could commit, or that they could do the arrests. I forget phrasing. But anyway, if the arrest is good, if it's based on probable cause, doesn't matter if you're found guilty or anything like that. But if your arrest is good, then you get protection still. Where was it at? Boom. The alleged bruising to Owings' wrist is de minimis injury, insufficient to establish excessive force. Minor incidental injuries that occur in connection with the use of handcuffs to effectuate arrest do not give rise to constitutional claim for excessive force. Painful handcuffing without more is not excessive force in cases where the resulting injuries are minimal. Assuming that Owings disclosed a pre-existing shoulder injury to Rogers during the arrest, he was not required to credit Owings' statements made during handcuffing, and the record does not indicate that he knew his actions would seriously aggravate her pre-existing injury. Once Rogers became aware of Owings' shoulder injury, he applied 2 sets of handcuffs to lessen the pressure on her shoulders. The record does not demonstrate that Rogers handled Owings in an objectively unreasonable manner, etc., etc. So I just wanted to bring this one in because I found it while I was going through the trespassing ones. And it's harder to get those 1983 excessive force claims than everybody wants to think. Just because you went to the hospital doesn't mean you're going to win. Just because you went to the hospital and they found some damage doesn't mean you're going to win. The police get to handcuff you. And I don't know if you notice what Jack does every time he gets handcuffed, because he seems to have a penchant for getting handcuffed. I'm talking about Texas Sheepdog. He always says, "I've got a hurt shoulder." And that's exactly what I would want my client to say, because then if the shoulder gets torn up, then if they don't take into account the shoulder injury, then you get paid if the shoulder gets damaged. And the shoulder does have to get damaged, so that's, just letting you know. Remember, the point of these lawsuits is to make you whole again, or as whole as money can make you. So I hope you enjoyed. No, you don't have to commit a crime to be trespassed in Texas from public property. Yes, they can trespass you from public property. And they can handcuff you when they do it. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.